I remember going into the office before I had the job of Pepper Ann, and I went into this was Disney, so it's like, office and big and scary. And there were demo tapes from Phil Collins, Eric Clapton, pitching songs, and songs for The Lion King, and I was like, wow, they've got to do this. What's up with that? And now I'm so used to it. I don't think I'm comfortable with it as much as I understand. When you're working on a film or television show in particular, you have to pitch ideas. You have to share them. I have to make it so that what is it going to sound like?
Hi, you're listening to Conversations with Musicians with Leah Roseman. This week's episode is a catch-up episode with the renowned film and television composer and multi-instrumentalist Pat Irwin, and we are featuring lots of Pat's music for you today in different styles from many of his projects. In my previous episode with him from 2023, season 3 of this podcast, we talked about his days with the B-52s and composing the score for Dexter New Blood, and we also talked about his band Sus and his work mentoring graduate students, and so much more. I encourage you to click on the link to that earlier episode if you missed it. Today's conversation also jumps around Pat's varied and fascinating creative life. You'll hear more stories and music from some of his acclaimed cartoon music, from Rocco's Modern Life and songs from Pepper Ann. We talk about and you'll hear music from some of his projects, including Rocking Out with the P.I. Power Trio with Sasha Dobson and Daria Grace, and new albums coming out with Cynthia Slade, with Sus, and with Julia Hayward. I'm blown away by Pat's detailed memory, and this episode is rich with interesting stories and also his down-to-earth advice. Like all my episodes, you can watch this on my YouTube channel or listen to the podcast on all the platforms, and I've also linked the transcript to my website, leahroseman.com. Finally, before we jump into our conversation, I wanted to remind you that I send out a weekly email newsletter where you can get access to sneak peeks of upcoming guests and be inspired by highlights from the archive. Did you know that I take care of all the many jobs of research, production, and publicity for the series, which is in season 4? I really do need the help of my listeners to keep this project going. Please consider buying me a coffee through my support page, which is linked to PayPal. You can find all the links in the description of the episode. Now to Pat Irwin. Hey Pat, so great to see you again. Thanks for joining me here.
Nice to see you too.
I was reflecting on how you were only the second composer for media I had interviewed back. I guess was it 2 years ago? I should have checked the date, but it was a while back. And I have a little more experience talking to people in that industry now. But I remember also at the end of that conversation, you had reflected on, getting back to performing, and you have been doing quite a lot of playing. So we're going to talk about new projects as in your life as both a performer and composer, and some of the old stuff. I thought it might be cool to start with something we didn't really get into last time. Was you had written the music for Pepper Ann, and after we talked, you got permission to release some clips to use for the episode.
That was a fantastic experience. It was all done in California. I was talking about performing. I was almost always on the road with the B-52s, so I was doing it in motel rooms and backstage, a lot of backstage stuff, which was pretty challenging. But I had just the most phenomenal team around me with copyists and 3 Disney copyists, 2 music editors. We would show up for the sessions, and there were movie screens with streamers, session musicians. Some of them were kind of famous. The drummer was a guy who also played with Steve Reich and a classical drummer, but he played traps, and he really loved the setup. I had pieces of sheet metal hanging, and it pushed me in remarkable places because they really wanted to work for me. They gave me a safety net so that you know, at first I always thought I was going to be fired, because I was, so did the creator, we were these two New York kids in the room with these real professionals. And then later we realized we were all in the same place. There was a music supervisor there from Disney named a woman named Bambi Moe who really had my back all the time. And I got to use an orchestra, a 24-piece orchestra. Sometimes it would be a 6-piece band, 30-piece orchestra. If I needed a harmonica player, they would get the guy who played harmonica with the Beach Boys. Great. Reddy Freddie Washington was on bass. He played with Michael Jackson. It was such a thrill. Writing it was intense. I had this big road case, and I remember the B-52s. We were on tour with the Pretenders, and I think the Pretenders road crew would take my stuff would be packed on the semi last, so it would come off first, and I would go into the dressing room and work on the cartoon. It was a real team effort, and a wonderful experience. And it's no small thing that I got an email from like this network of young people who sing songs together from the musical. It's fun. It was a great experience.
When you say the musical, was there a musical based on Pepper Ann, or you mean from the cartoon?
I wrote a musical episode.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm trying to understand, when it was being recorded, would they fly you out to LA? Or okay.
Yeah. It sounds wild right now, but we would schedule it around my, Disney just gobbled it up. They had a contractor, a guy that I'm still in touch with, who would organize the sessions, and they would be in real professional studios, like big league studios. And so we would book the time, and the copyists would get all the charts together. If we needed to make a change, the copyist would be right there. And some of them were written by hand, like real old school, phenomenal. And so I'm learning on the job, like this is correct. It was awesome. And one of my favorite memories, though, was the very first session we did. We're in the studio. I'm really nervous. There's executives, there's people, Disney people. And Pepper Ann was the first cartoon also by by a woman that they had. And I, for what it's worth, was the last guy to have a live band for a Saturday morning cartoon. But it was live. And but we did the session, and I'm all, I just go, great, when do we mix? And the engineer, who also was a kind of a famous guy, that I've been reading his name on the back of records. He had been with Wally Heider and done other big movies. And so I go, great, when do we mix? And he goes, it's mixed, baby. What? You're kidding me. It was recorded live to 2-track with a backup on a multi-track, for the Disney archives. But so I had, it was no like pulling it down for the dialogue kind of stuff. I had to learn how to write underneath it, and it had to be recorded like that. And then the Disney engineers would lower it. But the first couple times I didn't understand how that worked, and so it was good. And for what it's worth, it's not like I've done any other Disney cartoons after that, but it was a wonderful experience. And I love the characters.
We've included lots of music in this episode, and these first clips are from the cartoon Pepper Ann. The first song is called Enough, And you can find images of the score on my website, linked in the show notes.
I don't mean to be rude or seem unkind. If you sing one more song, I will lose my mind. I want back the boring and the same old rut. I can't take this heck of a hazelnut. Enough, and once again, no dancing men or CHICKEN. Enough, 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 enough. She says she's had enough. I've had enough.
What is she saying?
I don't think she's well.
Maybe she's lost it, you can never tell.
That Pearson girl's odd.
A trouble clap.
Why is she yelling? We're old, not dead.
We're all not dead.
Enough, and can't you see you're killing me? And some of you are so off-key. Enough, enough,
Enough, enough. She says she's had enough.
I've had enough. Give me my life back, I'm down on my knees. I need the routine of bologna and cheese. I once had it all, and now it's all gone. What are you doing? Get off my lawn. Get off her lawn. Enough. Do I have to shout? Just cut it out. Oh, can't you see I've had about enough? Enough. 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 She's had enough. I've had enough.
Let me just understand about something you said. So did you have a script, Pat? Like you had to write under the dialogue?
I had scripts, but I would write to rough cuts.
Okay.
And then the rough cuts would get more final. So by the time we did it into the in the studio, I had a final cut. So we were all looking at a final cut.
And did you play on any of those tracks as well?
Well, that's interesting. They wouldn't let me play, which was sort of a bummer. I mean, they got these awesome guitar players and keyboard players, just, read anything type of guys. And again, kind of famous, like one was with the Brothers Johnson, another was with Paul McCartney, like just great readers, players. But I always wanted them to sound kind of like me.
Yeah.
But none of them would sound like me. They sort of sounded slick and not. So I struggled with that a little bit.
Yeah.
But I understood because as we did it, it was so old school. We would be in the studio, and it would be like, we need to fix that. We need to. How is it? What is that? It was real old school. So they didn't want me playing.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I wished they're downstairs, but you should see the charts, the orchestral charts. The ones that are written by hand are. I mean, Disney. They've done this before.
Yeah.
They're really good at it. It was really an honor.
So actually, Pat, what we can do, I sometimes put a gallery of images, so it would be on my website associated with your episode. So we could include a photo of a score or, other images from your life we're going to talk about. So I can,
that would be fun.
Yeah. Here's one more song from the cartoon Pepper Ann. This is called Photosynthesis.
Okay, now pay attention to my lecture. It isn't just conjecture. I'm sure as heck sure you'll agree that learning photosynthesis is something that you shouldn't miss, so take some notes and sing along with me. We exhale carbon dioxide, it's toxic though, so step aside. So how do we get oxygen? That's where all the plants come in. H2O is known as water, pay attention, it gets harder. The water in the chlorophyll with sunlight on your windowsill break down the carbon dioxide. It's really quite a jolly ride. We're learning photosynthesis. You really should get into this. Any questions? I thought not. Now let's go over what we got, Nikki.
Carbon dioxide.
Dipper-Ian.
My pen just died.
Dater.
This is baked, not fried.
Young men, kindly step outside. We're learning photosynthesis. This isn't something you should miss. Now listen up, we're almost through. Let's continue our review, Trinket.
Water and sunlight.
And
Chlorophyll? Like, am I right?
then
Photosynthesis.
finally they're getting this. We're learning photosynthesis. We're learning photosynthesis. Now join the fun, the floor of bliss. There's known as photosynthesis.
I still have in one of them I was going through it because I shared it with some students, and one was going through, and I still had my Disney parking pass. I have to go into LA. It was real, like, show business. It was fun.
I get the feeling you're a bit of a collector. You collect instruments and memorabilia. How do you cope with that?
I never thought of myself as that way, and then that's kind of coming up. I'm at this age, I do and I don't. Like for instance, I had these old Farfisa keyboards that I just love, Italian combo organs. Kate used one in the B-52s. I think it's in the Metropolitan Museum of Art now. And maybe we shared, maybe we went back and forth on them. I don't remember, but I had them through the years. But I also sold them. I would get broke, and it would break my heart, and I'd need the room. I didn't have the space. And then yesterday, somebody got in touch with me, and they had found one, and they repaired it, and I so I do and I don't, but I do. I'm finding myself saving things from time to time.
Yeah.
Let's not say it. Collecting, like Fred from the B-52s. He is a record collector. Like, you can't. I couldn't keep up with him. I had to like you wake up in the morning and you see everybody in the hotel. I'd kind of have to like maybe avoid Fred because he was going to go record shopping, and I couldn't keep up with him, And he's just got walls and walls of records. It's so much fun.
Yeah. So speaking of your early career, you're going through old Ray Beats archives.
Yes, I am.
Have you found any cool stuff that you kind of forgot about?
Yes. How funny you mention that. There's a guy named Weasel Walter who has an archive site that you can find, and he has everything. And he sent me some stuff that I didn't even know about that existed. But I found, that tragically, one of the original members of that band, the Ray Beats, died. He was also an Eight-Eyed Spy, the band I had with Lydia, and but what's been really fun is finding some material with him on it, and that's just great because he was a dynamo. George Scott was his name, and there was one recording that we did. We actually went in, and we were being produced by Philip Glass and Philip's sound man at the time, Kurt Munkasey, and they did all their recording at a studio called Green Street, and we had done 4 tracks with this original bass player, with George, but nobody knew where the tape was.
Oh.
And a friend found it in England. So that's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like it's not like a live club recording. It's a real audio recording with George on it. So I'm really excited about what we're going to come up with.
Okay. And, so still going back in your earlier history, you're getting a band back together, Rocco's Modern Life, right?
Yes. Yeah, I sure am. That, again, I'll send you some photographs of some of those scores. Well, what's interesting about that is I'm in touch with all the musicians. And the first thing we realized were none of us are the same that we were 30 years ago. Like, how is this going to happen? I mean, Kevin, the drummer, he plays like a teenager. And he's with energy and imagination and virtuosity all rolled into one that's just spontaneous and inspiring. And I'm in touch with Kevin. I'm in touch with everybody. He's such a remarkable musician. So giving. It's very different than Pepper Ann. Whereas if I didn't write it down in Pepper Ann, it wasn't going to be played. It wasn't going to happen. I mean, they kind of got out of that bag with me a little bit, starting with Mike, the drummer, when like Pepper Ann would have a crisis, I would have like a solo cello with like these pieces of metal being banging around, and everybody was like, "Whoa, what is this?" But it kind of worked for the cartoon. Kevin would just do that out of the blue in Rocco. It would go into a march, and out of nowhere, Kevin would reach into his bag and he'd pull out a whistle and or a toy. It rattles. I don't know. And everybody on Rocco, all those musicians did that. They took it to another level. Yeah, we're going to play. We're going to do a live concert. We got everybody back. And we're going to there was a musical episode of Rocco, and we're going to do those songs. And hopefully the theme, we'll perform the theme live as well. It's fun.
Will this be in New York?
Yeah. Hopefully it'll be cool enough that we'll kind of be able to maybe get the show on the road a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, because this stuff has a lot of fans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't want to make too much of it, but I'm really fortunate to have done stuff with a pretty long reach, and these cartoons have a life. They're in the air.
Yeah.
It's wild. It's cool.
And they're on YouTube. People.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay. You can find them.
Yeah. Now, on the first episode with you, we did include some clips from Rocco's, but it would be fun if people didn't hear that yet. We could include maybe a different clip so people can hear some of that music.
Yeah.
Because people can go out and buy and stream the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're about to hear a clip from the Rocco's Modern Life soundtrack. This track is called Junk Junkies.
mean, we didn't. There were miles. There's miles of that stuff.
This next Rocco's track is called Bookshop.
Sometimes, I'm a pretty big music fan, and so like take somebody like on a super high level, like Bob Dylan, let's say, and I would read an interview with Bob Dylan, and it would be, and somebody would say, well, how come you don't do the songs you did, how come you don't play like Nashville Skyline or Another Side the way you did, how come you don't just do Blowing in the Wind? And he would say, I don't even know who that person is anymore. And I never really understood that. How can you not know? Like, my God. But now in a different way, I sort of do with Rocco's Modern Life, and I'm going to have to practice that stuff. And none of us are going to be the way we were 30 years ago. I mean, it's not like it's a classical piece like a Bach convention that you read. This has like real energy, but it's going to be. We're getting the band back together.
So you had the scores stashed away somewhere?
Sadly, that I threw out boxes and boxes of that stuff. I looked at it, I goes, who cares? And I just threw it all out. So now I've got some of my students are transcribing it for me. I'm not as good as they are, so they're doing an amazing job of transcribing, and then I'll proofread it. I've got some notes here and there, but I wrote a lot of that out by hand. So I just threw it away.
Transcription, that's a real skill.
Goes right over my head. But some of these students are just masterful. They're blowing my mind.
So you teach at both NYU and Brooklyn College, graduate students.
Yep.
I was wondering about a couple things. Like something came up, I think it was with Adam Blau. He was saying if something's rejected, you're working on a project and something's rejected, you can repurpose that material like no one's ever heard it. Do you ever find that that's worked for you?
Yes. The first person that I ever heard say that was Philip Glass, and he said, never throw anything out. Never. And that happens fairly often on a film where it'll be, but yeah, like I did a film demo. I remember the movie. I'm not going to mention it, but essentially I didn't get the job, let's say. And it was with a music supervisor who I really look up to and admire. And I auditioned, I sent in demos, I didn't get the job, but the music ended up being Wetlands by Sus.
Okay.
And that ended up being used by a couple tracks by Sus. On a television show, I did a bunch of material that didn't work. And some of that's going to be on the next Sus record. So yeah, I do repurpose things, but not like reuse them. I just, if they work. Bob from Sus has really blown my mind with that. He'll kind of say, hey, you haven't. He'll push me, and he'll make me look around. But so often that's my answer to that. Yeah, I'll find something and it'll make its way into another project. Yeah.
Now, I'll point the listeners back. So anyone who missed my first episode with you, it's going to be directly connected to this one. And we did talk about Sus quite a bit, and some of that music was played. But you guys have a new album coming out.
We do. I am really jazzed. It's called Birds and Beasts on Northern Spy. And I just like I love making music with these guys, and we all bring different things to it, and you can't really like everything you do. Some stuff maybe doesn't hold up, but I was listening to it last night actually because we're going to do some mixes in Atmos, which is brand new for me, Dolby Atmos, and so I was listening to some of the tracks, and there's a spontaneity and a freshness to it, and it just I've never done anything quite like it, so it's fun. It's a little darker. It's a little bit more ambient, but it's also got its own internal structure. I think I push for that a lot, actually, and then maybe Bob will push me out of it a little bit. Like he'll find something else to do. One track that I'm very excited about is called Migration. Everything's got kind of a birds and beasts theme in it. It was an improvisation that Bob and I did. We just sat down, and he really liked a track that I did with J. Walter Hawks, and so, which was sort of an ostinata figure on the guitar, and I just started to do something like that, and he joined in, and we played just off the cuff for like 10 minutes, and that track has Gary Lieb on it. Did an overdub. The late Gary Lieb did an overdub on it, and added some of his quirky synthesizer stuff, and then Jonathan, I had to chart it out and transcribe it for Jonathan. Then he did his thing, but nobody felt comfortable releasing it, and then I went back and gave it another go, gave it another listen, and I presented it to Jonathan and Bob, and it's going to be on this record, so I'm really happy about that.
Do you have a release date for the new album?
I don't have a specific date.
Okay.
But I'll look into it. But I know that it's going to be June. The supply lines for vinyl manufacturing are still a little challenged. So I don't think we have an exact date yet. But I'll look into it.
Does Sus sell quite a bit of vinyl?
I wouldn't exaggerate it.
Yeah. So there's people out there though.
But there are people like me.
Yeah.
It's very modest, but that's what Northern Spy is so great at, and there's a handful of these really independent labels that really, it makes a big difference. The sound of vinyl, oh golly, it's just really different than streaming, and I just love sitting down, putting the record on, holding the cover. We've got a great artist we work with named Daryl Norson, and the Northern Spy, the label, really pushed us in that direction for cover art, which was a little challenging at first because Gary Lieb was a visual artist, but we went with it, and now, it just is. I can't wait for you to see the artwork on this.
Yeah, they're really beautiful album covers, all your albums.
Oh, thanks. I'll let Daryl know. Yeah, he's amazing.
I was thinking maybe we could have a clip from a previous release, like maybe Heat Haze or something.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Do you want to speak to that track?
Gary Lieb, the late Gary Lieb, he had just such a unique abstract sense of music. And he brought in some sounds. He talked about the image that he had, and when he would look out his window and he could just literally, he was very visual about it. And he saw this haze coming, and he brought in these sounds that ended up in the track. And it was just like, hey, let's make something. And I just built the track up from what Gary brought in. But that one came from Gary.
This is the band Sus with Heat Haze. thanks for sharing that. Now, you had written to me before recording today about a really fun movie, But I'm a Cheerleader. So I went and watched it. It's on YouTube. Now, you had said this was on the curriculum of both of the universities where you teach, like as a cult film.
Yeah.
And somebody's going to release an album of the music that you wrote.
Yeah. Although I've got to find the master tracks.
Okay.
I used a vocalist on there. It was some, oh golly, the first time a student talked to me about it was at Brooklyn College, and they had just come out of their class. They didn't know that I had written the music.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anybody had seen this. It was like a long time ago, and now it's on the Criterion Channel. It's in gay and lesbian studies, film studies, LGBTQ studies, and Jamie Babbitt is the director. Just a wonderful sense of humor and so insightful and timely. And she liked the cartoon music I had she knew a couple of cartoons that I had done, and liked the B-52s as well. And so that's kind of why I had to audition, and there were other composers but I was fortunate enough to get the job. And I hope I get the opportunity to go back in and make something special about the release, because it was done very quickly and very low budget. And I was I think it was the second movie I did, or I wasn't the most experienced guy on the planet, and I did use it. I would just like to replace a couple of the instruments with some real instruments and make it more alive. But it's amazing to me that movie has a life. I'm so flattered.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking about something. You mentioned pitching a couple times so far, and this came up when I was talking to Kat Ray-Orendi. So she composes for a lot of kids' TV and jingles, a lot of Sesame Street, and she was saying no matter how well known you are, you still have to pitch often. And we were talking about how you have to invest time and maybe even money to produce a polished pitch. What do you think about that? Is that a change you would make in the industry?
I remember going into the office before I had the job of Pepper Ann, and I went into this was Disney, so it's like office and big and scary, and I was in the office in the music department. It was a floor, and there were demo tapes from Phil Collins, Eric Clapton, pitching song, and songs for The Lion King, and I was like, wow, they've got to do this? What's up with that? And now I'm so used to it. I don't think I'm comfortable with it as much as I understand. When you're working on a film or television show in particular, you have to pitch ideas. You have to share them. When you're doing a piece of music theater, like at NYU, when I'm working with those students, they can pitch a song by sitting down at the piano and playing it. I have to make it so that what is it going to sound like?
Yeah.
And that's really challenging and slightly unfair, because technology is changing so fast, and you can buy sample libraries and sounds, and it can get expensive. But I understand now, like I'm on a long curve. Like when I started Bored to Death, the HBO show, I was determined that every track that I sent in for a pitch, there would be no questions. Like they would go, oh, wow, this is, wow. And then then the challenge was, well, just wait. This is going to get better. I want to make this better. I love that feeling of wanting to really be a part of it and make it better. Pitching for ads and whatnot, I don't do a whole lot of that. And jingles. I did one or two, and I thought, oh, great, I'm in the club. I did it. This is great. And then that one came up for a big commercial thing. I pitched it. I didn't get it. Another one, I didn't get it. Another one, I didn't get it. I was sort of like, okay, this is not my thing. I'm just gonna, if somebody gets in touch with me, I'll do it. And nobody's gotten in touch with me, so I don't do too many. I've never, I did the one or two in a while back, and that was it. But I understand making the best sounding demo as possible. It comes with a deal.
Yeah.
It just you want to make people comfortable. You want to work with them. You want to make it right. I'm not. I don't really mind it.
I was just thinking about people starting out. Yeah.
Well, and I talk to my students about this a lot. And I make it part of the deal. The very first assignment I give out is making a reel.
Okay.
Pull your stuff together and tell me who you are. And it takes practice. And I still have heart failure when I have to do it. I just put together a reel for something that God knows how many people are up for it. But I didn't write anything or record anything new. I just pulled what I had. I'm getting more used to that. But sometimes I get a call to do, well, just send us some things, whatever. And I'm like, what do you mean, whatever? Give me a break, and then I and I want to work. I want the job. But for the younger people, it's challenging. It's heartbreaking. I just had a student, and I asked her about her software that she's using. She wanted to know about getting other software, and I said, don't do it. Don't spend any money. Let's not do that. Don't, please, because I know it would be on a credit card, and I know it's just heartbreaking. Like between paying for the samples and tuition, let's say, and rent and internet and computer upgrades. It's like God, but the fact of the matter is that if you're going to work in film and television, you've got to be able to make a demo that sounds like what you're going to do. It's just the way it is. It's part of the deal.
This next clip is from Pat's score to Nurse Jackie. Although we didn't talk about this particular project in this conversation, we wanted to include some music from it, and Pat is able to share a couple of clips of music from this award-winning dark comedy starring Edie Falco that aired on Showtime for 7 seasons, and Pat Irwin composed the score for seasons 5 through 7. So I'm curious the parameters of these reels. How long would the total reel normally be, and how short would each clip be? Are there sort of guidelines you give students?
Yeah, I'd say which I never follow my own guidelines. But if you try to listen to a bunch of stuff, it's challenging. Make it like 5 pieces of music, 30 seconds to a minute long.
Okay.
And if it has to be, if you put a song on there, and it's a 2-minute song or 3-minute song or whatever, okay. But don't make it so it's like 10 pieces of music that you've got to wade through like you're in a cafeteria line with a bunch of mashed potatoes or something. Just make it quick, hit it and quit it, and that takes practice. It's not an easy assignment actually for new students. It's like, who are you as a composer? Maybe you don't even know, or maybe you're not even sure you're a composer, but it like the woman who was my student earlier today, she sent me 3 or 4 really beautiful piano pieces. It took her a long time. She was late getting it to me, but I was glad she did. They were really interesting, syncopated piano pieces, and I was so happy to hear this stuff, and that gave me a clue about who she is as a composer. And then we talked about jazz and syncopation, and she talked about Kander and Ebbs and Chicago and cabaret, and I'm learning from her a little bit. I think if you've got a good relationship with a director, it doesn't have to be the slickest demo, but that can be really uneven, and I think I don't think you can ever rely on the person that you're sending the reel into. You've got to do the best you can, just and make it who you are. It's work. It's hard work.
So these students, are they collaborating with film students to create projects together all the time?
That's a good question too. Finally, we're getting to the point right now where we're really getting there and doing that, encouraging it. You don't want to mandate, make somebody collaborate with somebody. But although at NYU they do that, they mandate collaborations with lyricists and composers, and that's a pretty tall order. It's a really cool program, the Graduate School of Music Theater Writing at Fierstein, Brooklyn College, at the Fierstein Graduate School of Cinema. We just had a pitch, we called it a pitch fest, where Pratt Institute of Art, just up the street a ways, it's New York, So these animation students came in with their projects and pitched them, and the composers, my students, had their reels to pitch to the animators, and all of a sudden it was like speed dating or something, like this. But I had to kind of put on the brakes a little bit, particularly with the visual artists. It's like, you're listening to, like, you put on your Spotify or streaming services, and you can hear all this stuff. These composers are making this stuff from scratch, and it's not going to sound like a finished record. Establish some communication and talk about likes and dislikes. Particularly with music, it's you've got people with strong tastes often, and maybe you're passionate about your tastes. So you want your score, and let's just say you really like Spirited Away or some anime or something. It's more than likely a composer is not going to be able to give you something that sounds exactly like that. But if you can talk about the way the score is working and establish some commonality, try out a few ideas, that collaboration can be really precious. So I'm very excited about that, because that's why you're there. You want to start making music for film and TV. and in this case, animation. And what's cool for me, exciting for me, is I'm seeing filmmakers, these young filmmakers, pitch their work, and I'm seeing things that, as a professional, that I didn't really see before. That the vulnerability of the filmmaker. I'm used to how vulnerable I feel. Even with you playing something for the first time. Are they going to like it, or am I good enough, or whatever? Well, these filmmakers, it's the same deal, and the animation is thrilling, but it's coming. It's at the very beginning. There will be an animatic, and there'll be just line drawings that are animated, and then a few colors will be filled in, and it'll be the animated. Well, these two characters are skunks, and they run a bakery, and I'm like, wow, how cool is this? Or this one student, my animation is about the first lighthouse that was ever built. What? I love stuff like this. And another, so you get the idea. But what I was seeing in the filmmakers was a vulnerability. And so it wasn't necessarily something I wanted to highlight as much as making sure the composers respected that too. It can be really precious. There's for instance, let's go back to But I'm a Cheerleader. This is a story that the filmmaker had been living with maybe her whole life. This is a story she wanted to tell, and she was giving me the opportunity to bring music to it. I made some mistakes and misjudged a little bit about that, and as you say, pitching ideas. I didn't really understand. She was hearing things, and I needed to make these demos really clear. I couldn't just say it's going to have voices and a cello. I had to really do it, and that did cost some money, but I would get a friend to come in. My friend Wayne knew a singer, a woman who could do what we wanted, like one of those sort of vocalese type things. But this is part of collaboration that I really love.
Yeah, it's interesting because media composers are never working in a vacuum. But if you're, writing either in the rock world for a band or a concert composer in the classical world, you're often looking for inspiration elsewhere, right? Because otherwise, it has to come from somewhere.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Back to Heat Haze from Sus. Those are the moments that I live for. Like Gary came in. Not in a million years would have I done anything like that, let alone have a visual image as well as some sonic, as far as I'm concerned, just possibilities. He just brought them in. Now, he looked to me for kind of like editing them and turning it into something. But that was fun. I mean, and that inspiration and collaboration is when it's firing on all cylinders, it's great. But nobody also tells you how hard that kind of collaboration can be too. There's ups and downs, to be sure.
Yeah. Hi, just a short break from the episode, which I hope you're enjoying so far. If you want to check out over 100 episodes you may have missed, in addition to your podcast player or YouTube, I have an extensive website, leahroseman.com, with show notes, transcripts, the complete catalog of episodes, and you can sign up there for my weekly newsletter to get access to sneak peeks of upcoming guests. Please do share your favorite episodes with your friends, follow me on social media, and share my posts. And if you can spare a few dollars to help support the series, that would be amazing, and you can find that link in the show notes. I'm an independent podcaster, and I really do need the help of my listeners. Now back to the episode. Here's one more clip from Pat's score to Nurse Jackie. And in terms of media composers, other people have talked to me about how you just have to check your ego at the door, because if the team doesn't like what you've written at all, and you think it's the best thing you've ever written.
Yeah, and that's what I mean about on with But I'm a Cheerleader. I don't think I understood that quite so well, and for however long ago it was, let's say 25 years, I carried around this sort of enormous regret, like, oh man, I wish that I had understood her direction better. I wished I was a better listener. I wished I wasn't such a butt when she wanted me to make some changes, because she wanted it right, and she added some things at the last minute, a whole scene, and so I just, oh my God, I just wish I was better at it, but whatever. And so then we did these special features for a Criterion Channel reissue, Lionsgate DVDs, where you have to talk to the director. It wasn't like that at all. It was like, she was she remembered making me do things at the last minute, and we had learned so much as we had gone along, but there were no bad feelings, which I was grateful for. And you want to be the person people want to talk to.
Yeah.
You don't want to be like, that's Pat again on the phone. Oh God, what a drag. You just want to be, and when you've been in bands for a long time, you also know that there are ups and downs, and you sort of roll with certain things. You have to.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't, but that's the way it goes.
Yeah. Now, in terms of collaborating with old friend Cynthia Slay, you have a new collab going. What's that about?
Well, it's not new.
Okay.
We started quite a while ago, called Command V, and Cynthia's in a band called the Bush Tetras, which are peers of mine that go all the way back to my very first days in New York City. Bush Tetras were formed at about the same time as the Raybeats and Eight-Eyed Spy. I think we probably played in one of these bands, and we were all kids together. And Cynthia and I just started. She started to make some music on her own and asked me if I would help finish it. Probably 10 or 15 years ago.
Okay.
We made one record, and I think you could find it some places, but we didn't have the time to really promote it. But we just kept making music together, and never came out. And I have a feeling that she was already looking over her shoulder, going, "Hey Pat, when are you going to get it together?" or whatever. And so I finished it, and we mastered it, and that's going to come out eventually.
Okay.
Really soon. Hopefully Bandcamp, something like that. I'll keep you posted. We did. I think we've got 10 tracks that are ready to go, and she's just, I love her voice. I love working with her. We've recorded some of the tracks right here. She's got great ideas. I think. Even over here, there's a piece of metal that I use. She goes, "How about like hitting that on the one, and dong, and things like that." It's a good collaboration.
Mm-hmm. Here's Command V with Cynthia Slay from a track called "Lost on Me" from the upcoming album.
Je t'aime, je t'adore, que t'aimes, vas-tu encore?
Oh, this is true. Oh, would you tell me if you were? I could play a little harder if the pain wouldn't hurt. Oh, you're always as romantic. Or was it something I said? Now the cobwebs in the attic. Dance with me, dance with me. I'll play dead. This time, like all times, is a good time. Oh, you always is truthful. Would you tell me if you weren't? I could play a little harder if the pain wouldn't hurt. Oh, you always is romantic. Or was it something I said? Now the cobwebs in the attic. Dance with me, dance with me. I'll play dead. This time, like all times, is a good time. Lost on me, lost on me. Lost on me, lost on me. Lost on me, lost on me. This time, like all times, is a good time. Lost on me, lost on me. Lost on me, lost on me. Lost on me, lost on me. Dance with me, dance with me. Dance with me, dance with me. Dance with me, dance with me.
Yeah, I looked up the Bush Tetras, and yeah, there was this video that came up, Too Many Creeps, which I think got, it's really great. It got a lot of hits. And then I was thinking about the Much Music era, which was big at the time, and how that's all changed, The last
Yeah.
time we spoke, we had talked about how the music industry's changed in terms of print media and different kinds of promotion, but I mean, that's like been such a change in terms of the way people consume music, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been thinking about that a little bit, and I don't want it to be like, oh, the old days were better, this, but I'm concerned about the infrastructure, and it goes hand in hand also with what we were just saying about pitching and the expense and recording. You can now make records in your bedroom. Look at what we're doing now.
Yeah.
You used to have to go into a studio to, we're doing it too. But there would be like with Bush Tetras and Ray Beats and AI Spy, there was a club downtown, just down the block from where I lived, called Tier 3. I'm still in touch with the woman who booked that club, and you could play, and then you could get, I mean, it's just the sight of the ad in the Village Voice or the New York Times or whatever, the local Chicago Reader or whatever, the alternate Village Voice, you'd see your name there, and you could put up posters. There was just kind of infrastructure for and a support system, and I don't think that it's gone, or necessarily would I even say eroding, but the way we're consuming media now and the way it's being streamed, it's challenges. There's just challenges that to me are getting to be a little bit overwhelming. But then we're talking about Bandcamp, and we can upload our songs to Bandcamp, and it can be available. So, I don't want to take it too far, but yeah, I mean, the way we're consuming media on the internet now, it's a lot goes on the artist's shoulders. I'm not great at it. I do it. I'm really lucky that I've done things that somebody else kind of, like if it's a Pepper Ann, somebody will promote that, or the B-52, somebody will promote that. But Cynthia and we're going to have to promote it, and that can be challenging.
Yeah. I was just thinking about, podcasts do play in a little bit, podcasts like myself and much bigger music podcasts. And there's an ambient country, like, is it Bob with the ambient country podcast? It's Bob Holmes, right? I listened to a little bit of that. That's really cool.
It is. It is. I mean, good for him, I mean, he's another one. I mean, he gets out there. He's really listening to a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. He's passionate about it, which at the end of the day, that's like the bottom line. I mean, and he gets out and he finds people making stuff, and good for him. He's taking it upon himself to share it and get it out there. Yeah, it's cool. He's really great at that. Yeah.
Now, the last time we spoke, we were coming out of the pandemic, and performances were just kind of getting going. And I remember I was asking you to reflect on that, the shutdown time, and you're saying, I just want to play, I want to get better. I'm not quoting you exactly, but you have been playing quite a bit, and the PI Power Trio is one of your bands. And you guys put out a record before the pandemic.
Right, we did. I think a little EP, like 4 songs. I grew up loving instrumental rock and roll. I remember hearing, like, if you're from a certain part of the country, you'll know what I mean. Like, I remember hearing the first band I really heard live. They were playing down by the lake, and it was a party, and the sound of the reverb, it just grabbed me. It hit me, and they were playing like a Ventures. They were playing Wipeout, and then they played a Ventures song. And I'm crazy about instrumental rock and roll. Link Wray, Rumble, Jack the Ripper, and the Ray Beats were kind of based on that shared love of instrumental rock and roll. Pre-Beatles, kind of, if you will. If you go on YouTube and you Google, I think you can Google Pat Irwin, Ventures, or Ray Beats and Ventures, and we did a TV show with them. Mm-hmm. In Japan, I think, where and there's other people playing with the Ventures. I think Peter Frampton. I can't remember, but I just love that music, and so I met through J. Walter Hawks. I met Sasha Dobson and Daria Grace, and Sasha plays in a band called Puss in Boots with Nora Jones, and they would do Christmas shows at a club in Brooklyn. And there was a whole circle, generation younger than me, of musicians that I didn't know. And of course, Nora has gone on to great success. But for some reason, Puss in Boots couldn't do it that year. And so Sasha asked me if I wanted to do anything. And I said, well, sure, but why don't we do something together? And it was like, what do you mean? Well, let's just figure something out. And we were in Walter's building, and we went down in the basement, and I taught them a Link Wray song that the Rabies used to do, that Philip Glass played on a version. And it was like, wow, they had never played anything. They were just this sort of singer-songwriter folk kind of thing. And this was like rocking. But I loved playing with them. And Sasha, she's got this unpredictable rock and roll energy that I just love. I mean, it's not slick, but it's got passion and heart. And Daria is just the same. She's just a wonderful musician, really dependable and great to play with. But I also love the way they sing. And so I wanted to somehow work vocals into it on like these, I can't remember what the records were, but somewhere back there I remember these abstract women vocals, like on Les Baxter or Martin Denny records maybe, where there's vocals coming in. And I hope we can do more recording, because we've got more songs, and it's just a fun band.
Yeah, I was looking, like Sasha, I mean, she's a singer, but she's like a multi-instrumentalist, right? Because she plays drums in your trio, but she's also like a guitar player and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, she's a jazz singer.
Yeah.
She grew up singing jazz, and she's very accomplished, and I think she's playing at Lincoln Center, and she's going on the road with Nora this summer. They're gonna, do dates, and Sasha's gonna be in her band, and then Daria has a band with Walter.
The Pre-War Ponies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was thinking, could we have a clip of The Walk on your album that you did with them?
I have an audio clip, but I don't know that I've got a video.
No, that's fine.
We do I think on the recording we have we do a B-52s song. We do 52 Girls, kind of hellacious version of that. We do 4 songs. PH Factor, I think, was written by a guy named Peter Holsapple.
Yeah, I listened to the EP on Bandcamp.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So you've heard it.
Yeah. This is The Walk from the PI Power Trio.
I mean, the like the beginning of the Ray Beats, George Scott had the most intense instrumental rock and roll collection. You know, speaking of collectors, floor to ceiling, like, and he would organize his records by serial number. So, you know, like Link Ray and or Red Bird Records or whatever the label, Dot, whatever the label would be. And but George was working in a record store called The Musical Maze, and it just popped into my mind because Peter Holsapple from the DBs, who also went on to play with Hootie and the Blowfish, he and George were next door neighbors. The Ray Beats toured England, I think, with the DBs. But anyway, they were working in a music store called Musical Maze. And George noticed that these guys, you know, they started to get these 12-inch records of hip-hop music. But on the B-side would be an instrumental. And one of the very first ones had a sample of Apache, done, which is an instrumental hit by Jorgen Ingman, and the Shadows did a great version of Apache. So did the PI Power Trio. We did Apache, but it was sampled by Grandmaster Flash, I think. Their version was done by the Amazing Bongo Band. So George said, "Hey, man, let's form an instrumental band. These hip hop guys are coming in with 12-inch dance records. We can do that." I mean, that's how odd and crazy it was. It was like we and naive in a way, because we didn't have anything to do with hip hop. But George thought these 12-inch instrumentals are being played in clubs, and that was another part of that infrastructure with DJs playing. You know, Too Many Creeps by the Bush Tetras was sort of a dance hit in clubs, and it played in the videos up in Canada and all around, and the United States. Regrettably, I wasn't in that video. I couldn't make it that afternoon, but all my friends are in it. You know, if you look carefully. But we you know, that kind of energy that George brought to the Ray Beats. And then Don and Jody, also, the other two guys who were in the Contortions, you know, kind of grew up loving the same instrumentals that I did, you know. And it wasn't just surf rock, you know, it would be like Link Ray or Booker T and the MGs, you know, Soul, the Meters with Sissy Strut. And you know, nobody was doing that, or so we thought. So we'll do that. And PI Power Trio, you know, Ray Beats don't play anymore. Fine, not a big, you know, whatever. You know, we're still in touch and we're friends. But the PI Power Trio gives me that opportunity. But it was new. I had never played solo guitar in a band like that before. It's scary. There's nobody helps you, you know, like there's no, you know, I can't hide behind somebody else. I have to really either do it or I either hit it or quit it.
Yeah. Before we wrap this up, I'm just going to check to see if there was something we wanted to get to. Oh yeah, you have a new short film score, When Last Seen. Yeah.
I do. Yeah. Did I send you any of that?
You didn't. So, When Last Seen, is it based on a book? I was looking it up.
It's based on the Persephone myth. The director really liked Sus, and that song that I mentioned before, Wetlands, has a bouzouki, and she loved that, and it's a contemporary update of the Persephone, and it's a really, really good movie. I hope it sees the light of day, and I'll send you some of the score.
This next clip is from Pat's score to the film When Last Seen.
I really like the score. I mean, she liked the music I did for Dexter, so she wanted a little of that
Yeah.
feel in there, and she wanted that kind of what did she say? There was a reference that she made. Oh, Run Lola Run.
Oh.
She made a reference to a movie, and that kind of collaboration. The reason she made that reference was that I wasn't getting it. I didn't really get what she wanted to be doing. And she said, this is the Run Lola Run moment, and that was the kind of direction that I just, I got you. I see what you mean. There's another project I'd like to mention to you called T Venus, which was a band started by a visual artist named Julia Hayward, and that music never really saw the light of day. Although we toured with the Kitchen, which is an alternative space in New York City, put on a tour with Reese Chatham, Eric Bogosian, kind of performance art, choreography, and Julia was a video artist. She probably the most famous thing she did was the video for the Talking Heads song "Burning Down the House," and she and I had a band called T Venus, which was actually started with Don and Jody from the Ray Beats. And then later, Jim Sklavounos from Eight Eyed Spy joined when Don moved on. And anyway, Julia is finding all sorts of things that we made, and that's going to come out as well. And I don't know if I'll ask Julia if she would mind if we shared some. And then the label that's coming out, I think it's called Sundays. I'll make sure that it's. But I'll get permission. Maybe you'd like to hear some of that.
Sure, great.
She's a real character. I mean, she performed. The first time I saw her perform was something called the Nova Convention, and she and Laurie Anderson would do performances together. And it's on a recording. I think that was the Nova Convention was a series of concerts featuring William Burroughs and the writer John Giorno from the Dial-A-Poem Poets released it on his label, and you can hear the performance of. It was the first some of the first recorded performances of both Julia and Laurie, and they would perform together and alter their voices. Laurie was famously known for making her voice, using a harmonizer and making it into a male voice. She's phenomenal.
Here's an excerpt from a track with T Venus featuring Julia Hayward called Smile, Don't Touch That Dial from the upcoming album.
And the winner.
Stop what you're doing and
Yabba dabba delicious, yabba dabba delicious, yabba dabba delicious, yabba dabba delicious, yabba dabba. Yabba dabba delicious, yabba dabba delicious, yabba dabba delicious, yabba dabba delicious, yabba dabba delicious. And the winner.
Just to wrap this up, Pat, I was thinking about a couple things. I mean, for one thing, listening to you talk, you have a phenomenal memory. And you just have this web of connections that I think's really helped you, right? It's always like somebody knows somebody, that's often the way it is with careers, would you say?
No, totally, absolutely. Again, my students, they want to know about that a little bit, and I'll say to them, the biggest asset you have is each other. You're gonna know each other for a long time if you do it right. And it's the same with like what you said about Cynthia and the Bush Tetras. This was like my college. They were my high school. And I'm not in touch with everybody, and not everybody got along. That's fair enough, or whatever, for whatever reasons. But, these are my friends. I mean, these are people. I mean, like if Bush Tetras put out a record, I want to support it. I want to know. I'm so proud of them for Pat in the Bush Tetras. She's like one of the most awesome guitar players ever. And it's like I sometimes think about networking, and somebody said, well, if you're not networking, you're not working, or something. And I've never really been one to go out to like networking events or promote myself but in another way, I network with all my friends in these clubs that we played at, and those are the connections I made, and I still have them. Mm-hmm. You're right.
Yeah, and the last thing I was thinking about is that you've carved out this career as both a performer and composer based in New York. You never felt that you should move to LA. In fact, you were really a New York musician. What do you tell your students? I mean, they're in New York. Is there pressure to go west?
Well, when I was doing Pepper Ann, I got an apartment in LA through a friend. The first guy I met at college, and so it was like in a little basement. There's no question that the business is based in LA, but I never felt comfortable there. I loved I actually like LA. I don't love driving like that, but I like it. I love and I love the passion that the filmmakers have, and I thought, oh God, I'll get an apartment there, and maybe I can do this stuff. I want to do it. It never really worked out. I never felt comfortable there. But there's no question about it that that's where movies are being made for the most part. I mean, there's a very vibrant independent filmmaking community in New York, and television more and more is being made there. There's no question that things are being made there. But I know that my opportunities have been severely limited by being based there. I'm fortunate enough to have an agent. I've had the same agent since, I can't add that fast, 30 years probably. And he'll put me up for a job if it's a New York based job. But it's there's no question that more movies are made in LA. But by the same token, I also know that, I mean, I can tell you a Pepper Ann story if you want to hear it, but
sure,
that it was a real revelation. Okay, so whenever, I don't remember the year, but whatever, they were making in these studios, they were making a big old Disney movie in the big studio next door with big orchestras and real conductors and the whole bit. And I don't remember the movie. I'm going to make it up. I'm going to say like Little Mermaid. It was on that level. Huge. And the session broke. It was done. It's all union by the clock. Everybody splits. And they're looking over their stuff and they go, oh my goodness, we forgot this one piece of music. It's the character comes up in a horse. It's got to be like chivalry. chivalrous and dismounting knight in shining armor kind of thing. And I said, I do that, and I'll do that. I'll have it for you tomorrow. It'll be, I can do that. And the room went silent that I was in. It just was like the air went out of it. It got sucked out of the room. And Reggie, the contractor, it was sort of like that scene in the back of On the Waterfront, like that could have been a contender. Today's just not your day. He goes, Pat, and he's shaking his head at the same time. And I was like, I'll do it. He's saying, sometimes you want a fastball right down the middle. And with you, we're just not going to get a fastball. And I was like, I can do it. I can give you that right down the middle. And at the time, I was crushed. My feelings were really hurt. And then many years later, I really realized, yeah, he's right. I mean, they needed to feel really comfortable with the composer. There's a really correct sound. Yeah. There's a correct way of voicing and voice leading. The company needed to feel comfortable with whoever they hired, the director, and this had to be done overnight. And there's plenty of people in LA who could do that, and I wasn't one of them. And that's sort of an illustration for there's a real correct sound for some film scoring, and I'm not the most correct guy on the planet. It just isn't going to come out that way. I don't have any regrets at this point, but some of those big film scores, those guys are good, and women, too. Unfortunately, there aren't enough of them, but there's a really correct sound for Hollywood film scoring, and I'm not in that bag, for better or for worse. It's just I can only really be myself. I think I've talked about that last time with you. It's just I can't change it. It's who I am. Things have been just fine.
Yeah. So thanks so much for this today. It was really great to catch up and hear all your stories.
Yeah, I got to tell you, if you don't mind, I've done a few, not really podcasts like this, but I've done a few and you're really good at this. You really make me feel comfortable. You're so well prepared. It's just a pleasure. So I can't thank you enough.
Well, thanks so much for your kind words. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please do share this with your friends and check out episodes you may have missed at leahroseman.com. If you could buy me a coffee to support this series, that would be wonderful. The link is in the description. Have a wonderful week.